Morning super sentence stackers, welcome to the classroom. I'm Jane Considine, your English writing teacher, and we've gathered today because we're going to focus our writing around an Oscar-winning short animation called Paperman. This is just an adorable film. We have George, the central character, who is on his commute into New York City, and he has an accidental encounter on a blustery day with a lady called Meg. We're going to write a third person narrative, and our characters are going to be called George and Meg, and we're going to be using pronouns like he, she and they. I'm going to be your writing teacher, but there are some rules that we're all going to work to. Firstly, I'd like you to go and watch the film Paperman. There is a link in the description below. I want you to watch the whole film, I want you to enjoy it and take as much as you can from it. Then the next thing I'd like you to do is choose a chunk. What Mrs. C has done is cut the film up into 9 distinct pieces, and when I ask you to choose a chunk, that means you have chosen to write within those time allocations. You're not going to breach those times, and if you stay very particularly within those times, it means that your piece of writing can be sewn beautifully together later to give good cohesion to the nation's story. This is such a perfect film. I know you're going to really enjoy it. And once you've chosen your chunk, Mrs. C is going to challenge you to write 9 sentences. I want you to try your best. Don't worry if you can't make 9, but I really don't want you to write any more than 9. When you're thinking about your writing, you've chosen your chunk, you've written your name and your age on your piece of paper, then I want you to see if you can include today's writing challenges. And what are today's writing challenges? Well, there are 3, and there are always 3. Our first writing challenge today is all about action. We're going to write an action-packed story, and there'll be lots of moments in this story when we can include glimmers of humour, because this film actually made me chuckle out loud. The second challenge of today is going to be a simile. I'm going to ask you to construct a simile using this word as. And I'm going to show you how, after you've made a comparison to something else, that you're going to use a colon and list 3 adjectives to enhance the description of the comparison. Don't worry if anything sounds a bit tricky. I'm here to help you. I'm going to do that in a moment. Now, the third writing challenge, we've never done this before, so I want to spend some time explaining it. We are going to take a sentence from an author we already admire, and we're going to use the structure of a sentence from one of our favourite authors. The author I've chosen today is J.K. Rowling, and our showcase sentence, I'm going to read it for you now. We're going to use this sentence as a sentence scaffold, and before I read it, at the heart of this sentence and locked in it is a challenge that we're going to have a go at doing. J.K. Rowling writes a multi-clause sentence, and she breaks it up using conjunctions and as and and. I'm going to read this sentence now, and I'm going to show you how we can use it as a sentence scaffold. When I use the term sentence scaffold, it means that we are not going to have the same content, but we're going to use this structure. I'm going to read that sentence now. Dumbledore watched her fly away, and as her silvery glow faded, he turned back to Snape, and his eyes were full of tears. This sentence has many clauses in it, and J.K. Rowling uses commas to break them up, and here uses conjunctions and as, and here uses an and. We're going to follow this structure for our writing later when we build the third writing challenge. Okay, once you've watched the film, once you've chosen your chunk, once you've got a piece of paper with your name, age and chunk number on, you're ready to write. I'm going to be your writing teacher now, and I'm going to do some demonstration writing. I'm going to do it in a certain way so that you can see my behind the scenes thinking. You're going to get an insight into the writer's brain as I talk out loud my choices and some of the things I might be including, rejecting or sharpening in my writing. So, I'm working on chunk 2 and I want to include some action. I think I'm going to gather them like a power of 3 to really emphasise the action in the story. And where a lot of movement happens is when it's really windy. The nature in the story really is trying to help and sometimes hinder, perhaps pushing or pulling these two characters together or apart. So, I'm going to start with the wind. I'm going to make sure that the reader knows how blustery it is. The blustery wind, I like that adjective. The blustery wind grabbed. And this is the part of the film where the wind grabs a piece of paper. I like that word. It personifies the paper. I actually like stole. I'm going to choose that, I think. The blustery wind stole one of George's pieces of paper. One of George's pieces of paper. I know that George's needs an apostrophe and I know the pieces of paper belong to George. I'm going to put a belonging to apostrophe just there. The blustery wind stole one of George's pieces of paper, and I'm now going to get that movement, the action in. I'm going to see if I could get 3 verbs together to emphasise action. The blustery wind stole one of George's pieces of paper, and it swirled and it spun and tumbled until... Did you know the word until is one of the words in the top 100 most misspelt words in English? And many people make a mistake with just one letter. Until has 1 L only. And it's always worth remembering that. And it swirled, spun and tumbled until it... I think we could use quite a humorous word here because this part of the film made me giggle. A very dramatic word, a bit comedic, something like slapped. But I'm going to do some thesaurus thinking, so I'm sure it's the right word. Slapped. Oh, I could use that. In the same synonym family, whacked. Oh, that's a good word. Or I could have something like smacked. All of those are great, but I think this is the funniest word. I'm going to use whacked. Until it whacked into a lady's face. Oh, the belonging to apostrophe again. A lady's face. Oh, I love this. And we've got 3 action verbs then, and we've got this humorous one then. I've done a lot of action in the early part of that chunk. Okay, I'm now going to move to write a simile, and this film is black and white apart from one thing, and it's her red rosy lips. Her lipstick is really bright and dominant against the black and white backdrop. So I feel like I should mention this in the writing. I should compare her lips to other things in the world that are red. Maybe rubies or strawberries or roses. Okay, let me see if I can set up this simile. When the paper hits her face, her lipstick is left on the paper. Her lipstick marks his work. His work. And then I need to introduce the redness. It was as red as, I like strawberry. It was as red as a strawberry. What I'm going to do now is introduce a list of 3 adjectives. I'm going to use a colon to introduce that list, and I'm going to separate them with commas. I'm going to cleverly choose those adjectives as words to describe her lips and lipstick as well as a strawberry. Juicy is a good dual adjective there. Juicy, fresh, and my third word could be something like delicious. I'm going to do some thesaurus thinking now to check out, is that definitely the word I want to use? I'm going to collect other words in that synonym family. Delicious. Oh, that's quite tricky to spell. Delicious, delectable, delectable, tasty. I think delectable's a good word. I'm going to choose that. Actually, better than tasty might be tempting. I still like delectable. I'm going to have that as my third adjective, delectable. What I'm going to do now is going to use the help of J.K. Rowling, and I'm going to use her sentence as a scaffold to write ours. Ours is going to have different content, but we're going to build a multi-clause sentence, and we're going to follow her structure of and as and. We're going to use those conjunctions to join our sentence together. She starts with Dumbledore, but our character is George. So we're going to use that character name, and they're going to be the subject of our sentence. George watched her fly away. Well, fly away wouldn't be right for us, but he does watch her. George watched her move away, but it doesn't make it obvious to the reader that she's on a train. So I'm going to add some extra information there. George watched her move away on the train. What does J.K. Rowling do next? Well, she puts in a comma and she uses the conjunction and as. And as her silvery glow faded, he turned back to Snape. I'm going to lean on that structure, but I need different ideas. And as her, I'm going to go back to the lipstick, and as her red stained lips faded away, he turned on the platform because he's left behind. We get the impression here George should have perhaps got on the train as well. Oh dear. Right. And as her red-stained lips faded away, he turned on the platform. J.K. Rowling puts in another comma and adds another clause on, using and to introduce it. And this ends like this: and his eyes were full of tears. This sentence has very obvious negative intent. And we don't want to have a negative intent sentence. We want a positive intent sentence. So we're going to think about the language we're using to finish this off. And his eyes, George's eyes, were full of curiosity. I'm going to use some thesaurus thinking now to get the right positive tone. I could have a word like excitement. His eyes were full of excitement. His eyes were full of interest. His eyes, in the same synonym family, his eyes were full of intrigue. I really like intrigue. That's how I'm going to finish off my chunk. His eyes were full of intrigue. I'm going to go back now and reread my writing, because when you're thinking so hard about the composition and you're really trying to craft accurately to the plot line, you can make silly mistakes with spelling and punctuation. So I'm just going to have a check. The blustery wind stole one of George's pieces of paper, and it swirled, spun and tumbled until it whacked into a lady's face. Her lipstick marks his work. It was as red as strawberry, juicy, fresh, delectable. George watched her move away on the train, and as her red-stained lips faded away, he turned on the platform and his eyes were full of intrigue. Oh, thank you, J.K. Rowling, for that sentence scaffold. That has really improved our writing. Okay, everybody. What I'd like you to do, remember, is go and watch the film. Go and enjoy the film. And when you've done that, choose your chunk. I'd like you to write 9 sentences, or try your best, and in the description below there's some helpful information on how to choose a chunk and write within the specific time requirements. I cannot wait to read your writing connected to this Oscar-winning film by Disney. And if you get your writing ideas back to me with the hashtag Super Sentence Stackers before 12:30, then you'll have a really good chance of being in the nation's story. I'll see you back at 3:30 for our wonderful story called Paperman. And remember, every piece of work needs to have hashtag Super Sentence Stackers, and you can contact me on Twitter at Jane Considine. You can contact me on the training space on Facebook. Thank you, everybody. Get your brains working and your pens moving, and I'll see you later at 3:30 for the nation's story.